So back a few months ago, I was experimenting with smoking DMT on LSD and also one prodrug of LSD called 1P LSD. I'm sure you guys know about that one, so I won't go too much into it, but it's basically something that breaks down in your body into actual LSD. So it's a bit of a loophole for certain legal things, so it's technically a legal high of some sort, but for me, I can't notice any difference between 1P LSD and typical normal LSD. So, in this time period of my tripping experience, I was experimenting with taking about if it was LSD, it would be around 2 tabs, and the 1P LSD were micro pellets. So, the micro pellets were around 150 per pill, and I would just be taking those. And at around the peak or a little bit after the peak, I would attempt to, well, not attempt, but I would actually smoke DMT. And I preferred tripping like this for a fair bit, but the only thing about it was that I found it to be very terrifying in a way. And it's hard to really explain how I felt about that, so I'm going to try to break it down. But it happened ever since I had the really scary oral DMT experience. It was almost like it was giving me a bit of a flashback to that old experience where I felt that it was too much for me and I was out of control. And this experience is a little bit different because I would usually be tripping on the LSD and it would be a nice, smooth, recreational trip. For me, LSD is always a recreational drug and there's nothing to be afraid about for me. I never find it to be intimidating in any sense. It always just seems to be something that is fun and lighthearted, and the visuals are geometric for me. I usually do it in silent darkness anytime that I trip. So when I'm examining the visuals, a lot of it is just pure geometry, and it's as if it's the DMT world without any sort of flavor. Or if you were to think, an analogy that I like to use is a show back probably in the early 2000s called Beyblade, and they basically had these blades with certain entities inside of them, and I would consider LSD to be one without a Beyblade without an entity, and DMT to be a actual entity or a dragon of some sort, and shrooms as well. There seems to be a presence inside that. What I'm basically saying is that LSD doesn't seem to have a presence of any sort, for me at least. But it's very interesting to watch this transition happen. So when I would just be enjoying the LSD trip, I would prep myself to smoke the DMT. And I would only need about 20 to 25 milligrams. Anything more and it would be way too intense. But when I smoke the DMT, I can just feel the transition from LSD to DMT, and it's such a bizarre, smooth transition that I almost don't even realize it's happening until I become scared, basically. So how I sort of explain this is when I take the DMT, when I smoke the DMT, it has this weird sort of jungle taste to it. And it's hard to describe, but the taste is actually different when you're smoking it on LSD versus smoking it sober. I can't really pinpoint how it feels, but it feels as if it has this jungle flavor to it, and it feels almost eerie in some sort. I can't really explain how I feel about it, but it just feels different, and it's a intimidating feeling, I think. And then I'll basically smoke it, and then I'll think that nothing's happening. And that's the very strange part. There's always this moment where I think that nothing is going on, and I just smoked nothing. So I'll smoke it, and then I'll lie in my bed, and then I'll just be examining the LSD patterns, and then all of a sudden it just has this tribal type of sacred geometry, and it goes from not being anything specific to all of a sudden, okay, something's happening here, and it's becoming this weird tribal, dark tribal essence of some sort. And then before I know it, it just becomes, I get this flashback of fear that I felt in my oral DMT experience. And it's funny that during the LSD trip, it's all happy and lucky and good and recreational and fun. But when I smoke the DMT, all of a sudden I get this feeling of, oh no, what have I done? Now this is going to last for my whole LSD trip. And that's the thing that really, really scares me a lot, is that it starts to bring my mind back to that oral DMT trip where I was really afraid. And then it's telling me that this is going to last for your whole LSD trip. Well, you're never going to come down from this DMT flavored experience. And there was times where I would look outside, and then outside would feel almost apocalyptic. There's this type of apocalyptic sense to it. And granted, my room is dark, so I can't really see too much around the room, but usually there's light outside my window when I'm doing this. But something about it feels very apocalyptic, and I always get this sense of regret of why did I do this now? I'm gonna have a bad trip for hours and hours, and I'm not gonna get out of this thing. And it's tough to tell myself that that's not gonna happen. And I have this weird, when I was doing the LSD with the DMT, I had a weird connection of where it was scary to me, but it was also kind of fascinating. And once it wore off, I would think, oh wow, I'm so glad it wore off. But wow, that was cool. I want to do that again. But I end up not doing it again because I'm too afraid to do it, and because there's this fear that it won't go away. And that's what I think causes a lot of the anxiety. But what I'm seeing in these trips is it ends up being an immersive DMT experience, and I have the typical visions of landscapes, and it's very Egyptian ancient type, but it has this dark tint to it, and it's hard for me to really express it, but I find that it just completely freaks me out in a mental sort of state where I just feel like it's bringing me back to some of the most difficult experiences that I've had, and then it's telling me that it's going to last forever, and it's never going to stop. So I go from 1 minute just feeling like my LSD trip is really fun, and then once I smoke the DMT, it's no longer fun and games. It's serious business, and it's as if I've thrown myself in some sort of battle of some sort, and some sort of it's like a war of the world kind of thing, and then I was just like, oh, why did I instigate this? Why did I start this thing? Why I there's always a sense of regret to it. And I think that it's hard for me to really explain why that causes me fear, but I think it's a little bit easier to do that than it is to try to go for the heavy oral DMT experience, because that's just a whole nother level of really scary. It still seems to get to me. I really want to try it again, but I just want to make sure that I can still handle it, the LSD on top of the DMT. But it's definitely a different experience. I know Terence McKenna talked about seeing the actual elves come to life in some sort of sense, but that's not my experience. He didn't really mention that there was anything fearful to happen around it, but for me, it turns into this dark tribal war kind of thing in my own head, and then I'm always worried that it's just not going to go away, and it's just going to last my entire LSD trip. And granted, it does last longer, but it's not the same as a normal DMT experience. With normal DMT, with just being sober and then smoking it, I'll just go to really different realms of some sort when I'm closing my eyes. I'll go out of body, but it'll be a similar realm that I'm familiar with, but there's less familiar territory when I'm mixing it with LSD. There's something that happens, or it brings me somewhere that is different, and I just respond with fear most of the time. It's never a happy experience or something that I find is easy. It's always a thought of what have I done, and now this is gonna go on forever. And I think it's hard to really explain why that's scary to some people, but I'm sure that anyone who's been through it kind of knows how that feels. Because tripping is really fun in games until you have that one experience that really really scares you, and then anytime you trip, you think about that experience again, and then you're worried that you're going to start getting brought back to that. And that's basically the essence of mixing DMT with LSD is it tries to remind me of the times where I felt the most fear, and then tries to bring me back to those. So I think that's maybe something that I can get over with. I haven't tried it in a long while, but if I ever somehow want to take LSD for whatever reason again, then I'll probably try that again to see where I go. I like to face my fears to an extent. I don't know if I'd ever want to try to face the heavy oral DMT experience again, but I'm gonna do oral DMT at lower doses, but I don't know if I would go past the heavy levels. Maybe I might in the future. I don't really know. I'm still deciding on it, and right now I'm not really tripping because I'm still dealing with things in my life, and I want to stay sober and unaltered for this sort of passageway. But I'm definitely starting to get excited about having an experience again. I definitely want to share it with you guys when I do have it. So yeah, just keep watching out for that, and maybe hopefully one day I'll be able to give you guys a report or a new report. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and kind of resonated with it. And if you want to tell me about your experiences and what you think about LSD and DMT together combined, then let me know in the comments. So I'll see you in the next video.